Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor and New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe. Hoping you all had a wonderful week despite the blizzard. I know I got a lot of cardio in with shoveling. I hope you did too. Hopefully you're all staying safe and healthy during these COVID times. There is a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been looking at the news feed for the last week, there's something that probably should have caught your attention and hopefully made you as outraged as I was. And it's become apparent that a member of the Norwegian parliament, who is on the Nobel Committee, has decided to nominate the Black Lives Matter movement for the Nobel Peace Prize. I know, hope you're sitting down, I'll say it again. The Nobel Committee is bestowing a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize for Black Lives Matter, the movement. Folks, I don't even know where to begin with this, all right? For a movement, right? And when people want to say, well, let's not judge a movement by a few bad apples. Folks, this is an orchard. Never mind a few bad apples. It's an orchard, for the love of God. But what we saw last summer and into the fall were many cities across the country being burned to the ground. We saw businesses being looted. We saw police cars being roasted. We saw even Molotov cocktails being thrown at police officers. We saw people having dinner being accosted, whether it was in downtown Washington, D.C., or even around the country. And I know some of you might want to say, well, that was more Antifa than Black Lives Matter. Folks, whether it was Philadelphia, whether it was across the river in New York City, whether it was even upstate in Albany, whether it was even down here in Trenton in New Jersey in our state capital, or across the country in the Midwest, whether it was Minneapolis, whether it was St. Louis, whether it was out all the way out in California with the cesspools of San Francisco and Oakland collectively, or even Los Angeles. Well, let's move up into the Pacific Northwest. Cities like Portland and Seattle alike all fell victim to the peaceful protests of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, folks, let me be very clear here, okay? These were the most expensive and devastating riots in American history. But sure, somehow, someone on the Nobel Committee feels that the Nobel Peace Prize for this movement is appropriate. Folks, I don't know if this is tone deaf. I don't know what to call it, okay? Now, my big question is, what's the criteria when we think about the word peace, right? When we think about, its acronyms, peaceful, etc. Well, maybe the best place to start is to go to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. So whether you have the app on your phone or you access it on your Mac or your PC, this is how peace is defined. Quote, a state of tranquility or quiet, such as freedom from civil disturbance, ergo peace and order, were finally restored in our town. Secondly, a state of security or order within a community provided for by law. Folks, does any of that embody what the Black Lives Matter movement was doing last summer and fall? Of course not. Now, listen, what's next? Stevie Wonder is Driver of the Year? No, here's a better one. How about nominating me for Most Wholesome Bachelor in Hudson County? Folks, that would seem ludicrous, right? Because for those of you that know me know that I am the least wholesome bachelor that there is. And of course, Stevie Wonder clearly can't drive, so you get the picture. And while I'm trying to be funny, I'm also trying to sort of make you aware of how insane this nomination is. Folks, listen, and let me be very fair because I'll put my money where my mouth is. I care about issues that affect people of color. I'm brown. I know you don't believe it. I know you see me up here. I'm probably like the most white-looking Hispanic you've ever met, but that's irrelevant. I care about issues that affect black and brown people, all right? Again, before entering academia and even in journalism, I worked in our criminal justice system for 10 years. I saw firsthand how black and brown people have been marginalized, especially with our antiquated drug laws. And I've talked about that before on this program. But you know what? Despite this, one of the things that I'm proud to do, and I do it every year as I renew my membership dues for the NAACP, is to be aware and to be conscious about issues that affect people of color. I can do that, okay? I can be sympathetic to these organizations. I can contribute to them. I can host them on my podcast. I can attend events. But I can do those things, folks, without enabling or even acquiescing to what Black Lives Matter, the movement, represents. Folks, listen, you can go on their website, and I get it that Black Lives Matter, the movement, came about after the unfortunate death of Trayvon Martin in 2012. And I understand that those were very unique circumstances, and I understand that in the years since then, police brutality has been a problem in this country. But you know what's also a problem in this country that people don't want to talk about? And again, this is taboo. You can't really bring it up in discussion because it's somehow forbidden. Folks, listen, police brutality still is a pervasive problem in the United States. Now, whether the liberal media wants to amplify it or not, I mean, that's your opinion, and certainly there's plenty of data and facts out there to suggest that it has been overblown. Now, it exists. But you know what also exists that isn't addressed by, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement? The ongoing rise and consistency of black-on-black crime in the country. Folks, that's fact. Okay? You can look up the FBI statistics, right? The FBI produces something called the Uniform Crime Reports, right? Something I remember learning about in graduate school when I was getting my master's degree in criminal justice. And listen, this is easily accessible information. Black crime is still a serious problem in the United States, okay? But would you even hear a peep out of the Black Lives Matter movement? Of course not. Have you even heard of the Black Lives Matter movement, let's say doing a city cleanup? Or with the millions of dollars that they've raised from either left-wing activists, elected officials, whatever you want to call it. Have you yet to see the Black Lives Matter movement do, send a kid of color to college on a scholarship? Have you seen them, for example, set up a mortgage program to help communities of color when it comes to possibly buying their first home? Because, folks, here's a reminder, black and brown people are still struggling in the United States to buy their first home, okay? But Black Lives Matter, the movement, would rather have you be outraged with a lot of their virtue signaling, but instead they should be focusing on those things. Now, if you're telling me that, hey, the Nobel Prize, especially for peace, is being bestowed on Black Lives Matter, the movement, for any of the things I just mentioned, then you have a fair argument. But they've done nothing. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars in the last 8 years since they've been in existence. And as I mentioned before, they have yet to send one kid to college. They have yet to do one community cleanup. They have yet to take any of that money and inject it into poor communities across the country, especially communities of color. So what exactly are we honoring here? What exactly are we trying to put on a pedestal? A movement, once again, that's been radical, that if you look up a lot of their manifestos on their website, and even some of their founders, they're admitted Marxists, they're admitted leftists, and this is what we're supposed to glorify? Folks, this, again, is as tone deaf as it comes. And I understand it's Black History Month, and people might say, well, Fernando, you know what, you're being a little insensitive by talking about this during Black History Month. No, I'm not, and I don't really care if it is. Not because I don't care about Black History Month. I don't care if this makes you uncomfortable. Because, folks, the truth is supposed to make you uncomfortable. I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm not here to smooch you. I'm not here to give you kisses and tell you everything's going to be okay. I'm here to tell you the truth. And as uncomfortable as that makes you feel, that's not my problem. That's yours. Because, folks, we're living in a time where we need to talk about these things openly. And we need to sort of accept things for what they are. Now, the liberal media will tell you that this is a great nomination. The liberal media continues to put Black Lives Matter, the movement, on a pedestal, and a lot of the activists with some of their radical rhetoric. Remember last summer when businesses were being burned down? When public buildings or even private buildings were being burned down? What was sort of the rhetoric by some on the movement? Oh, well, they have insurance. That's okay. They're insured. Folks, that's as short-sighted and, once again, as tone-deaf as it gets. But somehow we're still coddling this movement. And somehow we're supposed to believe, and mind you, folks, the person in the Norwegian parliament nominating Black Lives Matter, the movement, for the Nobel Peace Prize is an admitted socialist. So if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about how convoluted this nomination is, then I don't know what will. But, folks, I'm sorry. I can't take it seriously, and you shouldn't either. And when you look at the facts and you look at how just nonsensical this nomination is, you'll realize that I'm correct. I understand. I know for a lot of you that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's something you need to swallow nonetheless. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was a distinguished councilman in Jersey City from Ward D and a fellow Rutgers University alumnus, Yousef Saleh. We talked for over an hour on a plethora of different issues affecting not just Ward D, but overall the city of Jersey City. And here are some highlights for your consideration. First off, we talked about how his constituents have gravitated to him, especially with the shoes he had to fill with replacing the late Michael Youn after COVID took his life in 2020. Without a doubt, he got, he obviously won the special election on November 3rd, and consequently will be running for a full term coming up later this year under the ticket of Mayor Stephen Fulop. Let's hear what he had to say about his constituency and how really they've received him so well.
And what we saw last year was, you ran with the endorsement of the mayor. The mayor still holds a lot of favorables when it comes to his candidacy. We'll get to obviously his pursuit of a third term later this year. But a lot of people looked at your candidacy last year as not necessarily an indictment, but quite frankly, a reinforcement.
Test, probably.
Yeah, exactly. A litmus test and more reinforcement about how Mayor Fulop is viewed in the ward. We know that, again, your predecessor, Michael Youn, prior to being a maverick, he was a guy that, beat to his own drum, as they say, not in a defiant way, but in a way that, he remained independent. I think he remained very autonomous, and he had a following. And, you had big shoes to fill, and it's not even fair to say. I think it's conclusive to say that you passed that test with flying colors last November, Councilman. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to be an exact copy of the late, great Councilman Michael Youn, and nor do I strive to be. I want to be, Yousef Saleh, Councilman for Ward D, product of the Heights, loyal son, and I want to show people, maybe a different style to what Michael Youn has done, and I'm more hands-on approach, and I answer, to the best of my ability, everyone directly, and try to action things, and I go out there myself. I have youth and energy on my side, and I'm going to use it. And Michael Youn had his own, style to leadership, and I have my own style, but I take my notes from him. I don't think I've completely filled his shoes, honestly, and my heart is heavy when I think about it. I just try to do as best of a job that I possibly can. I go out there, I meet the constituents, on the weekends, during the nighttime. I try and solve the problems myself if I can. I try and solve it with, the collaboration of other city officials. I've tried to solve it with my council aides. We use a whole of government approach, and the election itself, the mayor has run other candidates in the Heights who had his endorsement, and they didn't, win. I'm just humbled to have had, his endorsement and the endorsement of the people of the Heights, and they know that my heart is in the right place and that I love my community, and this has been an honor and my highest calling, and I absolutely, I love it. Sometimes, when I wake up, I might think, with all the problems, I'll think to myself, like, what have I gotten myself into? But there's always a way, and that's what I've learned. Like, you just have to reach out. Like, I don't know all the answers, and there are other people that do. So then, you just have a collaborative approach, and you're able to, get results for people. And that's what I love, is like at the end of the day when you get the result for the individual or the family, and you can rest easy knowing you made a difference in someone's life, and that's the best feeling in the world.
Next, we discussed the inclusion of HCDO Chairwoman Amy DeGise as now an at-large candidate for the City Council, once again under Mayor Fulop's ticket. Without a doubt, you can hear how ecstatic he was to have Chairwoman DeGise on the ticket, and more so, the experience and the knowledge that she brings to the platform for 2021. Let's see what the councilman had to say about it.
Let's get to some politics here locally, Councilman. Now, last week, in her regularly scheduled monthly appearance, the distinguished chair of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, Amy DeGise, appeared on the program. She's always great to come on, and we have wonderful conversations. But not only is she the chair of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, but she is also now a candidate for City Council under the Fulop ticket, just like yourself. And obviously, her candidacy raised a lot of eyebrows. It got a lot of people talking. How happy are you to see Chairwoman DeGise now running on the Fulop ticket for one of the at-large seats on the city council?
I'm actually ecstatic that she's running, and I've run with her in the past, alongside her. I ran as independent for the school board in 2017, and she was running as a incumbent school board member at the time, and I really admired her for her tenacity, for her ability to problem solve, to bring technological solutions to problems that faced students and teachers in the classroom. She really has a unique perspective to problem solving that I think would be useful for the city council. And she's experienced. She's a woman. She's from Jersey City. Her father, who I adore and who I respect a great deal, is a man of the Heights, and I respect him a lot, and he's Heights blood like me. So I have a lot to learn from both of them, and I look forward to running alongside Chairwoman Amy DeGise.
It was a very informative episode with Councilman Yousef Saleh. You can listen to it in its entirety once again by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson. The episode is available anywhere, anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And these are the exclusives I'll continue to bring you in 2021 on the podcast every week on Blog Talk Radio. And here's some local stories for your consideration. Now, getting back to the opening monologue, obviously, even though there were some snow days that disturbed the school calendar, the first week of February, as sort of the inception of Black History Month, was Black Lives Matter Week at elementary schools all across the state of New Jersey. And of course, here in Hudson County was no exception. And folks, let me just sort of give you a little bit of a context exactly of why, again, another waste of taxpayer dollars when we're including this in our curriculum. It's bad enough that our kids, should be focusing on reading and writing, math, make them better complete students. But this is sort of the virtue signaling that the NGEA feels is necessary, again, at the expense of taxpayer dollars. So let me just give you a little bit of a rundown here. Based on the NGEA website, obviously, Black Lives Matter Week at schools all across the state were to be from February 1st until February 5th. And so the educators, students, and allies across race and place are taking action on key priorities to ensure that students have public schools where they can grow and thrive. Folks, let me just give you a little bit of a context here as well. New Jersey public schools have consistently been ranked one of the better ones in the entire country, if not the best. All right, if you ever follow U.S. News and World Reports or the NEA, sort of the National Education Association's national rankings. But again, of course, this is what the NGA feels we should be focusing on in our curriculum. Number one, implementing restorative justice practices and ending zero tolerance policies, hiring more black teachers, which we do anyway, mandating black history, which we do already, and ethnic studies, which we're already inundated with, and of course, funding more counselors than police officers in schools. Yes, because folks, whenever there's a problem in schools, yes, we need social workers and not police officers. Yeah, that's, again, sort of the short-sighted tone deafness that has come to embody Black Lives Matter, the movement. But again, this is what the NGEA, the New Jersey Education Association, is trying to sort of jam down our throats, and they've been making it part of the curriculum. And they've been obviously not so much encouraging, but mandating it in every school district across the country. Obviously, for every school district here in Hudson County, I spoke to many teachers where this was part of the curriculum this week. Thankfully, obviously, there were 2 snow days, so kids weren't in school, so they weren't subjected to this nonsense altogether. Now, again, let me go back to the premise of saying that, folks, this is where I feel so bad for so many friends of mine that are teachers, or that are fellow educators, whether they're in elementary school, middle school, or high school, that on top of everything they have to endure with lesson plans, with grading, with, again, in this very challenging times that COVID has presented for teaching, right? Because we're all, learning remotely. We're all having kids in front of their computers because of what's going on with COVID. Here's just one more thing to add to their plate. Because it's bad enough, folks, that a lot of kids, especially in their formative years, need to focus on real subjects, math, reading, and writing. Because this is what's going to make them better students, ultimately as they become older, and consequently, folks, will make them better candidates in the job market. Folks, you ever wonder why in Europe and in Asia, they don't bother with this sort of nonsense when it comes to the curriculum? And that's why they're kicking our ass on the global marketplace. That's why Asian students and European students are doing better than us. Even students in the Americas, right? In Latin America, they're doing better than us here because they're not focused on this woke nonsense. They're not fixated on this virtue signaling. They're not here to coddle all of this sort of multiculturalism and all this other nonsense. Folks, that's why they're doing better on the world stage. That's why they're better candidates in the job market. But no, here in the United States, we need to focus on creating a Black Lives Matter week in our public schools. Folks, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And once again, it shows you how blatantly biased teachers' unions are. And here in New Jersey, hey, it's no exception. Whether it's the AFT, which I'm a member of, the American Federation of Teachers, and obviously the state chapter of New Jersey, or the NGEA, once again, the New Jersey Educational Association, this is what they feel they should be allocating their resources to. Not making students better readers or better writers, because God knows we need that, or better at math, or better in the natural sciences. No, it's about virtue signaling and fixating on identity politics. This is what our teachers' unions are obsessed with, folks. And again, parents, you should be outraged because it's your tax dollars that are funding our public schools, and this is the sort of nonsense in the curriculum that's being force-fed to your kids. You should be outraged, and if you're not, you're just not paying attention. Let's move on to Hoboken, where in the Mile Square City, Mayor Ravi Bala is joined with Mayor Stephen Fulop right next door to go along with, thankfully, Governor Murphy's new mandates when it comes to indoor dining. Now, a shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, Jersey and Hoboken will indeed follow Governor Murphy's lead and opt to eliminate local and bar restaurant curfews starting this Friday at 8 a.m., according to Mayor Stephen Fulop and Ravi Bala. Some more information here for you. Quote, based on the guidance provided by Governor Murphy and the state of New Jersey, we have made the joint decision to allow bars and restaurants to operate during normal, regular business hours without a local curfew, both Fulop and Bala said in a lengthy joint statement. Quote, we trust that if Governor Murphy believed a curfew was necessary, it would still be in effect. But recent analysis from our health departments, as well as information provided by the New Jersey Department of Health, suggests that a curfew at this time may no longer be necessary. This time around, we believe that a coordinated regional approach is the best way to implement safety measures when necessary. Hallelujah. Why it took Governor Murphy this long to come up with this, groundbreaking idea that instead of this one-size-fits-all approach to COVID, why don't we do it regionally? I mean, I don't know what the Department of Health is doing over there, folks, but my God, listen, I'd fire them all tomorrow for what I would argue has been awful advice they've been giving the governor for months. Now, yes, we've seen a decline in COVID, maybe some spikes in some areas, but folks, you know what? And this is something that really sort of stands out for me. And shout out to State Senator Anthony Bucco out of Morris County, who I interviewed on one of my other media programs, who was urging the governor for some time, especially with Super Bowl 55 coming up this Sunday, to lift the indoor dining restrictions about 10 p.m. and to sort of lift curfews overall. Because, folks, listen, this is where, again, the Department of Health tends to be short-sighted. Did they think that a 10 p.m. curfew was going to be a good thing for businesses? Folks, if you're out watching the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl doesn't start until 6:30. And by the time 10 o'clock starts, that's probably somewhere in the middle of the third quarter, if not really maybe the end of the third quarter. So you have the entire fourth quarter to watch, and what are you going to do? Shut down restaurants, and what are people forced to have to decide on? Well, maybe they'll go to a house party, right? 20, 30, 40 people. Yeah, because that's not a super spreader event, right? So you see what I'm saying, folks? This is where I think Governor Murphy has pissed off so many New Jerseyans by taking this long to take a regional approach. Listen, I'm ecstatic that this weekend, restaurants in Hoboken, in Jersey City, in Weehawken, in North Bergen, Edgewater, wherever you want to talk about local venues, will have at least the opportunity to have A, not a curfew, and B, to make sure that, indoor dining capacities are now going from 25% to 35%. I would argue they should be higher. Folks, look at the state of Florida and look at the state of Texas. Okay, they're at 50%, if not higher. Now, you know what you want to say? Well, Fernando, New Jersey and New York are different than Texas and Florida. Folks, guess what? The reason those economies are doing better, the reason that states are doing better is because they took a regional approach right from the start. And that's why Governor Cuomo and Governor Murphy continue to do a disservice to their constituents. Folks, I'm not trying to make it political. It's not about Republicans versus Democrats, blue versus red, R versus Ds. It's just common sense. You don't need a medical degree to understand that a regional approach works best. It's worked in other states. Why Governor Murphy and why Governor Cuomo have taken this long, to enact this is beyond me. But you know what? Kudos, and I'm ecstatic to hear that restaurants all across New Jersey will benefit from these restrictions being lifted. Another story out of Jersey City, and a shout out to the Jersey City Times and Aaron Morrill for his report on this story. And to no one's surprise, ladies and gentlemen, New Jersey ranks dead last. Yes, you heard correctly, dead last for retirees. Now, chances are you haven't given much thought to retirement, and it's no wonder. Jersey City is a pretty young town, but with a median age of 34, according to the census data. That's almost 6 years younger than New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania in the metro area combined. It's really a paltry 16% of Jersey City residents that are over 60. But if you're a long-term planner, like I am, for example, and I'm taking retirement seriously, even though I'm still many years away, or one of the few gray hairs that are still here in New Jersey and already think about retirement, here's some new analysis about financial planning that should blow your mind. And in analysis of the best and worst states for retirement, New Jersey has come in dead last. Yes, I repeat, we're dead last in the country. Worse than Delaware. Yes, even worse than West Virginia, which is a bunch of boondocks if you think about it. Yes, folks, that's how bad we're doing here in New Jersey. And, looking at some observations here, obviously, New Jersey ranked, specifically Jersey City ranked 172nd out of 182 possible cities for retirement. So it makes you sort of wonder if the whole thing is rigged. And at this point, what are we doing here? And it's a reminder, folks, when we think about policy and how bad it's been in New Jersey. Again, I'll keep saying it until the cows come home. All right? For the last 20 years, Democrats have run the legislature in Trenton, primarily liberals and progressives. And you know what they believe in? Tax, 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 and spend, spend, spend. There isn't nothing they don't love taxing, and there isn't any amount of money that they don't love spending. Folks, that's what's put this state in such a fiscal rut. I don't want to put all the blame on Governor Murphy because we've had Republican governors and Democratic governors who have sort of interchanged over the last 20 years. But it falls on the legislature. A lot of people say to me, well, Fernando, you never come down on conservatives or Republicans. You're always coming down on liberals and progressives and Democrats in Trenton because those are the guys and girls that are running the state legislatively. They're the ones in charge of the budget. They're the ones in charge of making policy. When Republicans and conservatives have a say in the legislature in Trenton, then I'll come down on them. Yes, there are Republicans and conservatives in both chambers of the legislature, but they're powerless, folks, because Democrats have had strong majorities for almost 2 decades. And that's why this state is in such a mess. This is why this state is awful for people to retire to. This is why states like Florida and Texas are having people come in droves because they're realizing, just like across the river, that New York and New Jersey are a mess. And they'll continue to be a mess because we continue to reelect liberals and progressives who know nothing about economics, who know nothing about budgets, and that's ultimately going to doom the Garden State. And that's our show for this week. To check out the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And remember, live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can check out the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. I continue to bring the exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County. I'll do that for the rest of 2021 and the years thereafter. And never forget, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm your favorite professor and New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe, saying have a great weekend, enjoy the Super Bowl, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.